Look at the crack in your driveway. Look at the crumbling foundation of that multi-million-dollar English bridge in town. Look at the concrete being poured today in every modern subdivision, gray, dull, and doomed. In 20 years, it will be dust. In 50 years, it will be a memory. Now, look at the Roman Pantheon. Look at the massive aqueducts that still carry water across valleys. Or the harbor walls in Italy that have been pounded by saltwater waves for 2,000 years without a single steel rebar to hold them together. The modern world tells you that concrete is a disposable product. They tell you that cracking is just what concrete does. They've convinced you that every 30 years, you must pay a contractor thousands of dollars to tear up your yard, haul away the waste, and pour more of the same shoddy, short-lived gray mud. They are lying to you. There is a $2 powder, a simple white dust that the plain folk have used in various forms for centuries, that holds the secret to structures that don't just last, but actually heal themselves. The industry calls it self-healing Roman concrete. My grandfather just called it doing the job right the first time. The reason the $60 billion modern concrete industry has buried this isn't a secret. If your driveway lasted 2,000 years, how would they sell you a new one in 10? If you knew that a bag of lime and a bit of heat could restore your barn floor to look factory new and stay that way forever, the chemical sealant industry would vanish overnight. Stick with me. I'm going to show you the hot mixing secret the Romans used to build an empire. I'm going to show you the microscopic clasts that act like a medical scab for a stone wound. And I'm going to show you exactly how to use a few dollars worth of powder to restore and build concrete that will be standing long after the modern world has crumbled. To understand why modern concrete is a failure of stewardship, you have to understand what it actually is. Modern Portland cement is a fragile marriage. It relies on a chemical reaction that happens once, and then it's over. It's brittle. When the earth shifts, and the earth always shifts, the concrete cracks. Once that crack forms, water enters. If there is steel rebar inside, the water rusts the steel expands, and the concrete explodes from the inside out. It is a system built for the English way of life. Build it fast, build it cheap, and let the next generation worry about the bill. But the Romans and the builders of the old paths didn't build for the next fiscal quarter. They built for the next millennium. For decades, scientists stared at Roman concrete in confusion. They saw small, white, chalky lumps inside the mix, little white specks about the size of a grain of wheat. For a long time, the experts in their vanity dismissed these as poor mixing. They thought the Romans were just sloppy. That was their first mistake. Never mistake simplicity for sloppiness. Those white lumps are called lime clasts, and they are the most sophisticated piece of technology ever put into a building material. Here is the science of providence that the industry ignored. When the Romans made concrete, they didn't just mix cold water with dry dust. They used a process called hot mixing. They took quicklime, a highly reactive, caustic form of lime, and they mixed it directly with volcanic ash and water. When quicklime hits water, it doesn't just dissolve. It screams. It creates an exothermic reaction that sends temperatures soaring to over 400 degrees Fahrenheit. In that intense heat, the lime doesn't fully incorporate. It forms those little white clasts, tiny reservoirs of high calcium energy, trapped like seeds in the soil. They sit there, dormant, for years, for decades, for centuries. Then, a crack forms. Maybe a heavy wagon drives over it, or the frost heaves the ground. In modern concrete, that crack is the beginning of the end. But in Roman concrete, that crack is the trigger. When it rains, water seeps into that new crack. It hits one of those trapped lime clasts. The water dissolves the calcium, and the lime wakes up. It reacts with the volcanic ash in the mix, recrystallizes, and literally grows across the gap. The concrete bleeds calcium into its own wound. It hardens, and it seals the crack shut before it can ever grow. It is a self-healing organism made of stone, and the raw material to do it costs less than a cup of coffee. The part that gets me every time I look at a modern construction site is the waste. We are told we need polymer-modified resins and fiber-reinforced additives and industrial-grade sealants that cost $80 a gallon. All of these are English crutches. They are bandages on a broken limb. The Roman method doesn't need a sealant because the material itself is alive. If you have concrete that is pitting, scaling, or showing its age, the industry wants you to cap it with a thin layer of modern cement. Don't do it. Within 2 winters, that cap will delaminate and peel off like a bad sunburn. Instead, you look to the lime. Here is the parts list for a plain restoration and a generational build. First, the powder. Quicklime calcium oxide. You can find this at chemical supply houses or high-end masonry yards. Be warned, this is not the garden lime you put on your lawn. That is inert. Quicklime is hungry. It will burn your skin and your lungs if you are careless. It requires respect and stewardship. Second, the Pozzolan ***. The Romans used volcanic ash. If you don't live near a volcano, don't worry, the Creator provided alternatives. Finely ground fly ash, a byproduct of coal, or even metakaolin, fired clay, works the same way. In a pinch, even very finely crushed red brick dust will act as the reactive agent. Third, coarse aggregate clean river stone or crushed limestone. The recipe is simple, but the English fail because they lack the patience for the heat. Here is exactly how you use this to restore or build, and the mistakes that make the English contractors laugh. If you are restoring an old surface, you are essentially creating a Roman slurry. You take your pozzolanic ash and your lime, you mix them dry, then you add water. This is where you must be careful. The mix will begin to steam. It will bubble. This is the hot mix occurring. In this state, the lime is forming those clasts. For a restoration, you want to scrub the old concrete until it is hungry, clean, no oil, no dirt. Then, you apply this hot slurry into the cracks and over the surface. Because the mix is hot, it expands. As it cools, it creates a bond that is chemical, not just mechanical. It doesn't just sit on top of the old concrete. It knits into it. Here is what the world gets wrong. They try to use slaked lime that has already been soaked in water and cooled down. It's safe, it's easy, and it's useless for self-healing. Without the heat of the quicklime reaction, the clasts never form. Without the clasts, the concrete has no immune system. If you are pouring a new slab, perhaps a floor for a new barn or a walkway to the greenhouse, you use the Roman ratio. 1 part quicklime, 3 parts pozzolanic ash, and 2 parts stone. You mix it hot, you pour it thick, and you cover it with wet burlap. Modern concrete is cured in days. Roman concrete matures over months. The English are too hurried for this. They want to drive their trucks on it tomorrow. But the plain man knows that a work of stewardship is measured in generations, not days. As that slab matures, it becomes harder than the stone it was made from. And if a crack ever appears in the year 2080, the clasts will be waiting. They will wake up, they will drink the rain, and they will heal the floor for your grandchildren. Now, I must give you a word of honest caution, because stewardship requires truth. First, safety. Quicklime reacts violently with moisture. If you get it in your eyes, it will blind you. If you breathe the dust, it will sear your throat. You must wear goggles, a mask, and gloves. This is not a hobby for the careless. It is an ancient craft for the diligent. Second, the corrosion myth. The industry says lime concrete is too soft. This is a half-truth. It has lower initial compressive strength than modern high PSI concrete, but it has much higher flexural strength. It bends where the English concrete breaks. for a skyscraper. You might need the modern stuff for a home, a barn, a cellar, or a road. The Roman method is superior in every way that matters for a life of independence. Third, cost. The English stores don't stock quicklime because they can't sell it to the masses. You may have to search for a traditional masonry supplier. It may cost you $2 for the amount needed for a repair, but the cost is in your labor and your learning. The thing that stays with me as I walk through the old sections of our community is how the things we built by hand with simple lime and stone are still here, while the modern improvements of the 1970s are already falling apart. The modern concrete industry is a subscription to decay. They sell you a product that begins to die the moment it leaves the truck. They have buried the Roman secret because permanence is the enemy of profit. But for those of us who live plain, permanence is the foundation of our life. We don't want to be tethered to a contractor's schedule. We don't want to be dependent on a chemical company's patented sealer. We want to look at the ground beneath our feet and know that it is solid, that it is honest, and that it is prepared to heal itself. $2 of powder, a bit of volcanic ash, and the patience to let the heat do its work. That is how you build a legacy. That is how you restore the waste places. Stop buying the world's disposable stone